My purpose was to determine the effect of different grouping methods on the perceptions and the preferences of my Algebra 2 pre-AP students. For my literature, I focused on three, the ones that influenced me the most, which was Marzano, Kagan, and then there was a group study by McManus and Gettinger. All three of these are dealing with students that are working collaboratively. Marzano, if you know, is the one who came up with the 9 high-yield strategies, one of which is collaborative learning. Kagan is the structures that I use. And McManus was the one study that talked about students and teacher preferences. So for my grouping methods, I chose 3 of my pre-AP classes, my first, second, and third period, and I grouped them using 3 different grouping methods. So for my first period class, it lent itself well to grouping them homogeneously by gender, so all groups of boys and all groups of girls. My second period, I grouped heterogeneously, both by gender and ability. And then my third period, I grouped them strictly by ability. I went straight from the top to the bottom and then just made groups. Gender I did not consider. So for my research, the students initially completed an 11-question survey that was done on SurveyMonkey. This provided me with a baseline of their current preferences and perceptions regarding grouping. I then did some observations, one of which was as the students were completing 2 Kagan structures, a stand-up, hand-up, pair-up, which is a grouping method, and the actual structure was a quiz-quiz trade where they quiz each other and they trade cards. I then also conducted 3 semi-structured interviews, 1 student from each of the different classes, so I could see their perceptions on their different grouping strategy. I ended my research by having the students complete another SurveyMonkey, which was 10 questions to be more geared towards the new grouping strategies. So some of the things that I learned through my research, one of the things was when talking to the students regarding gender, both the survey results and some of their comments was that they really had mixed perceptions and preferences regarding grouping gender. The one that was grouped by gender actually preferred it, but the other ones didn't think there was much difference. I also found that 70% of the students really believed that collaborating was essential to their success in class. I also learned that students talked about both positive and negative aspects of the grouping. They talked about a recurring theme was that they could receive help, that they had different students to talk about, and that they could solve problems more efficiently. One of the things that came out through the discussions and the interviews was that students really disliked those students who initiated or conducted social talk that wasn't actually on task. I was impressed by their maturity and the fact that they really wanted to learn and saw this behavior very distracting. So my conclusions and recommendations for practice are this. What I found was that students preferred working with someone else regardless. However, groups of 4 were preferred. They were also perceived as being the best. Groups of 2 could cause more social talk than actual on-task behavior. And groups of 4 provided a more mixed ability and a more mixed problem-solving strategies. The other thing that you really need to do is you need to analyze your students' personalities and individual needs when looking about how am I going to group these, especially when talking about gender. Some students preferred the gender grouping, while others may be a little shy. So you really need to get to know your students regarding gender. And finally, the last thing is that it really is key when you're using collaborative instruction is that you really need to put structures in place. Just putting students in groups does not ensure that students will talk, especially on task. So you really need to work with these structures so that all of the learning is actually engaged interaction. Thank you.